On December 12, 2023, Caroline Ellison walked into a Manhattan federal courthouse, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to testify against Sam Bankman-Fried. What the media didn't report was that federal prosecutors had already identified something extraordinary in her pre-trial interviews, behavioral patterns suggesting she knew about additional crimes involving other major cryptocurrency figures who remained free and respected. 6 months later, those observations led to 3 more major prosecutions and the recovery of an additional $2.1 billion in stolen funds. The difference between prosecutors who saw only the obvious crimes and those who detected the hidden conspiracy wasn't access to better evidence. It was mastery of psychological techniques that Caterina Sforza, the most dangerous woman in Renaissance Italy, used to survive in a world where deception was an art form and misreading human nature meant death. During her 8 hours on the witness stand, trained behavioral analysts observed micro-patterns indicating she was concealing knowledge about a systematic network of financial manipulation extending far beyond the cryptocurrency sector. When questioned about specific timeframes in 2022, her involuntary stress responses spiked in ways that suggested omitted information about coordination with traditional financial institutions. Her resource allocation of attention during questioning revealed protective responses towards certain names that had not been mentioned in the investigation. Most tellingly, her emotional presentations about learning from mistakes and accepting responsibility failed to generate the authentic contagion effects that genuine remorse typically produces in observers. This was not the flicker of a soul in genuine remorse, but the calculated performance of a trained actor, a carefully constructed facade designed to elicit sympathy. Federal investigators used these behavioral insights to uncover a secondary conspiracy involving executives at 3 major investment banks, 2 hedge funds, and a prominent private equity firm who had been secretly coordinating market manipulation strategies while publicly competing. The additional prosecutions recovered another $2.1 billion in stolen funds and exposed a network of fraud that extended into traditional finance sectors previously considered above suspicion. The prosecutors who recognized these psychological patterns were prepared for revelations that shocked their colleagues, while those who relied solely on verbal testimony and documentary evidence missed connections that were hiding in plain sight through human behavioral patterns. This is the brutal truth. In any arena, the contest is not merely against visible rivals, but against the concealed intentions that drive their every move. In today's hyper-connected world, where information is abundant but truth remains fiercely guarded, the ability to discern unspoken agendas has become the ultimate competitive advantage, the true currency of power. Caterina Sforza didn't just rule as a woman in Renaissance Italy's most violent period. She dominated an environment where the most charming smile often preceded the deadliest betrayal, where survival required seeing through humanity's most sophisticated masks. Known throughout Europe as La Tigre di Forli, the Tigress of Forli, she controlled multiple city-states during an era when powerful men routinely destroyed anyone who threatened their ambitions. Yet she not only maintained power, but expanded it through an almost supernatural ability to read the true intentions hidden behind every word, gesture, and alliance. What makes her unique is that her gender, often seen as a weakness in her time, ironically forced her to develop these psychological defenses to an unparalleled degree. Men could rely on brute force and inherited power. Caterina had to rely on her mind, her cunning, and her almost forensic understanding of human nature. As Machiavelli so chillingly observed in The Prince, chapter 16, for a prince to be liberal in a way that he may be known as such, he must necessarily be lavish. and a prince should guard himself against the hatred of his subjects and against their contempt. Caterina understood that how one is perceived, even in small gestures, is crucial for survival, a testament to Machiavelli's pragmatic vision. Born into the Sforza dynasty in 1463, Caterina was thrust into political intrigue before she could walk. Her father, Galazzo Maria Sforza, Duke of Milan, was assassinated when she was 13, a brutal lesson delivered so early, teaching her that even the most powerful rulers could be destroyed by those they trusted most. This shocking act of treachery instilled in her a profound understanding of the fragility of power and the omnipresence of human deceit. Her early marriage to Girolamo Riario, nephew of Pope Sixtus IV, placed her at the center of papal politics, where deception wasn't just common, it was essential for survival. This was a world of Machiavellian intrigue, where alliances shifted like quicksand and smiles hid daggers, a landscape of perpetual distrust and strategic betrayal. When Girolamo was murdered in 1488, leaving her to defend their territories against overwhelming odds, she discovered that her gender made her simultaneously more vulnerable to attack and more capable of psychological analysis than her male contemporaries. While men resorted to open warfare, Caterina refined a different kind of weapon, the ability to dissect the human soul, to penetrate the masks of civility and see the brutal calculations beneath. Her survival was not an accident. It was a testament to her relentless application of these insights, proving Machiavelli's assertion that necessity is the mother of invention. What made her legendary wasn't military prowess or political connections, though she possessed both. It was her development of 6 psychological techniques for penetrating human deception so devastatingly effective that they enabled a woman to outmaneuver the most cunning male rulers of her time. These were not theoretical concepts from a dusty philosophy book, but life or death tools, refined through constant application in history's most treacherous environment, where a single misreading meant assassination, imprisonment, or complete destruction. Her survival depended on her ability to discern the true intentions of those who sought her downfall, a skill she cultivated with relentless precision. As Machiavelli noted in chapter 12 of The Prince, "He who relies upon mercenaries will never be safe or secure." Caterina relied on her own sharp intellect, a far more reliable force than any mercenary army, demonstrating Machiavelli's emphasis on virtù, the strategic brilliance to adapt and conquer. These techniques you're about to learn represent the culmination of Renaissance understanding of human psychology, distilled from an era when reading people correctly meant the difference between ruling and dying. This wasn't merely about political acumen. It was about mastering the art of human discernment in a world where appearances were everything and reality was constantly being manipulated. What Machiavelli himself perhaps only intuited, Caterina fully embodied. Fortune favors those who can read the true nature of mankind beneath their changeable presentations. While others fell victim to elaborate deceptions and grand promises, she developed systematic methods for seeing through humanity's most sophisticated disguises. This is not about trusting your gut. It is about systematically training your perception to see what is invisible to the untrained eye, to uncover the hidden calculus behind every performance. What destroys most people isn't lack of intelligence or resources. It's their fundamental inability to see past carefully constructed presentations surrounding them daily. You sense something doesn't add up but can't articulate what. You feel manipulated but can't identify the mechanism. You're blindsided by betrayals others somehow anticipated. This isn't intuition failing, it's the absence of systematic observation skills understood and applied by history's most successful leaders for over 5 centuries. The modern world, with its layers of digital disguise and filtered realities, makes these skills more critical than ever. from corporate boardrooms to dating apps, from political campaigns to personal relationships. The ability to discern true intentions from manufactured facades is the ultimate power, the true strategic advantage in the war of wills. Consider what happened in November 2023, when OpenAI's board shocked the technology world by firing CEO Sam Altman, only to reverse the decision 5 days later amid employee rebellion and investor pressure. What was then publicly reported was that several board members had been observing concerning patterns in Altman's behavior for months before the dramatic confrontation. During board meetings throughout 2023, these members noticed he displayed different stress responses when discussing AI safety protocols versus commercial development, suggesting his stated priorities didn't match his authentic concerns. When questioned about resource allocation to safety research, Altman's vocal patterns showed subtle but consistent stress signatures that contradicted his verbal assurances about the company's commitment to responsible development. His enthusiasm for safety measures seemed performed rather than genuine, lacking the natural emotional contagion that his authentic passions typically generated in listeners. When the crisis erupted, these psychological observations proved accurate, as internal documents later revealed Altman had indeed been minimizing safety considerations while accelerating commercial deployment of increasingly powerful AI systems. This incident highlights how even in high-tech environments, human behavior remains the ultimate source of truth, often revealing what words conceal. Consider for a moment the profound implications of this level of insight. Caterina Sforza developed her mastery through absolute necessity in an environment where failure meant not just personal defeat, but torture, death, and complete annihilation for everyone she cared about. In Renaissance Italy, where political alliances shifted like quicksand, and today's protector became tomorrow's executioner, she simply couldn't afford to take anyone at face value. She learned to see the world not as a stage for noble pronouncements, but as a treacherous battlefield of hidden agendas. As Machiavelli observes in chapter 19 of The Prince, men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. Caterina never allowed herself to be among them, demonstrating an unwavering commitment to seeing reality as it truly was. Her first technique, involuntary truth leak detection, emerged from her legendary confrontation with Cesare Borgia in 1499, when the Pope's son arrived at Forlì with overwhelming military force, demanding her surrender. Borgia was renowned throughout Europe for his psychological warfare capabilities, and had never failed to break an opponent's will through intimidation and manipulation. During their negotiations, he spoke with supreme confidence about his inevitable victory, the futility of resistance, and the terrible consequences awaiting those who opposed papal authority. He projected an aura of unshakable resolve, designed to crush her spirit. However, Caterina, with her trained eye, observed something others missed. When people attempt deception, their subconscious mind creates pressure release valves through involuntary behaviors that reveal suppressed truth. These are signals the conscious mind cannot fully control. Contemporary research in behavioral analysis confirms these leaks are due to the intense cognitive effort of maintaining a false narrative. When Borgia discussed the siege timeline, he unconsciously touched his sword hilt, a precise, self-soothing gesture indicating anxiety about military outcomes he was publicly certain about. This is a classic pacifying gesture, a non-verbal cue that the speaker is experiencing stress or discomfort, often contradictory to their verbal message. When mentioning his father's unwavering support, his breathing pattern shifted almost imperceptibly, becoming more shallow in ways that suggested concern about papal backing he claimed was absolute. This subtle respiratory change was a physiological leak of internal doubt. Most revealing were involuntary facial muscle contractions around his eyes when he discussed what would happen to her children if she continued resistance. These micro-tensions, often lasting less than a quarter of a second, are incredibly difficult to suppress consciously. They indicated genuine discomfort with threats he was making, suggesting internal conflict about actions he claimed he would take without hesitation. These involuntary truth leaks below conscious awareness revealed that Borgia was less confident about his military position than his presentation suggested, was concerned about maintaining papal support for an extended siege, and was uncomfortable with the level of brutality he was threatening. For Caterina, these micro-expressions were a window into his true state, a raw glimpse into his authentic intentions. Have you ever detected such fleeting glimpses of truth in others? If so, recognize you are already on the path of discernment. The psychological foundation of involuntary truth leak detection lies in effective dynamics and interpersonal communication. When people hold contradictory beliefs or attempt to present false information, conflicting with their authentic thoughts, their minds create psychological pressure, seeking release through unconscious behaviors. Human action mapping has identified specific mechanisms. When people engage in deception, their neural systems responsible for conflict monitoring become highly active. This heightened activity creates stress responses manifesting through involuntary behaviors, including micro-gestures, subtle changes in breathing patterns, fleeting facial muscle tensions, and micro-adjustments in posture occurring below conscious awareness. These are genuine signals the body cannot suppress. Psychologist Albert Mehrabian's 7-38-55 rule, though often misapplied, highlights the dominant role of non-verbal cues in conveying attitude, reinforcing that authenticity transcends mere words. This is a fundamental principle of human communication. What the body says often overrides what the mouth speaks. To apply this technique effectively, first establish someone's comfort baseline by observing their normal behavior during non-threatening topics. This provides a comparative standard. Note their default posture, typical eye contact, natural breathing rhythm, and common hand gestures. Then monitor for pressure points by watching for involuntary gestures during sensitive subjects. Identify self-soothing patterns, unconscious comfort behaviors indicating stress like touching the neck, stroking hair, or rubbing hands. Track breathing variations during specific topics, noting changes in depth, rhythm, or rate. A sudden shallowing or holding of breath can be a strong signal. And map truth leak clusters by correlating multiple involuntary behaviors with specific content themes. A single leak can be noise. A cluster is a signal. For instance, a person might talk about a major success with a genuine smile, but if their breathing becomes shallow and their hands engage in self-soothing, it's a critical incongruence. In negotiations, watch for these clusters when the other party discusses their bottom line or final offer. This is where their true stress, and often their true intentions, are most likely to surface. Apply this ruthless clarity in your next high-stakes interaction. Caterina's second breakthrough, temporal displacement recognition, developed during her complex relationship with Federico da Montefeltro, the Duke of Urbino. He was proposing a military alliance while secretly planning to betray her to her enemies in exchange for territorial concessions from the Papal States. Rather than focusing on what he said, Caterina observed when people's current behavior reflects knowledge about future events they haven't disclosed. Significant future plans create ongoing psychological effects, influencing present behavior in detectable ways, a concept now validated by modern strategic analysis. Think of it as a subtle psychological haunting, where the future casts a shadow on the present, influencing actions in the here and now. During their discussions, Montefeltro continued performing his duties competently and maintained appropriate respect in public interactions. He appeared a loyal ally. However, Caterina noticed he began treating long-term military planning with less genuine investment than usual, suggesting he didn't expect current arrangements to continue indefinitely. When discussing fortification improvements taking months to complete, his enthusiasm was performed rather than authentic. He was merely going through the motions of planning for a future he didn't expect to experience under her current leadership. His cognitive and emotional energy was subtly withdrawn from long-term commitments, as if he was already mentally checking out of their current alliance, psychologically inhabiting a different future. This is a common phenomenon seen in employees who are about to quit but haven't announced it yet. Their investment in long-term projects subtly wanes. Their energy seems reserved for something else. Most revealing was his emotional displacement around discussions of loyalty and service. When these topics arose, his emotional responses seemed to reference past feelings rather than current ones. He spoke about loyalty with a distant nostalgia rather than present commitment, suggesting his authentic feelings belonged to a previous time frame when his allegiance was genuine. For example, he might say, "My loyalty has always been unwavering," but his tone would carry a wistful quality, as if recalling a historical fact rather than expressing a present truth. By recognizing these temporal displacement patterns, Caterina realized Montefeltro was psychologically preparing for a different future relationship with power, one that excluded her. This was a classic future-oriented behavioral tell, a subtle leak of his true intentions, a sign of Machiavellian foresight. Have you ever detected such a shift? A person seemingly existing in a future yet to arrive. Consider its strategic implications. Consider a recent example in the corporate world. A high-performing manager suddenly reduces their participation in long-term strategic planning or begins speaking about their current role in the past tense. "When I was working on that project," even though they are still actively engaged. Their enthusiasm for future projects in their current department seems less genuine than their interest in general industry trends or networking events outside their usual scope. This indicates a mental shift, a psychological preparation for a new chapter. It's not about what they say they're doing, but how their energy is already being allocated to a different future. This applies not just to professional, but personal spheres. To identify temporal displacement in others, map temporal consistency by verifying that emotional responses match stated timeframes, e.g., excitement for a future event should feel genuinely future-oriented, not nostalgic, and certainly not detached. Monitor investment patterns by observing engagement levels in long-term versus short-term activities. A sudden disinterest or a disproportionate focus on short-term gains while long-term projects languish can be a red flag. Identify emotional displacement by noting when feelings seem to belong to different time periods. Listen for a shift from present, engaged emotions to retrospective or detached ones. Track future preparation by watching for behaviors suggesting preparation for undisclosed changes, such as subtle shifts in resource allocation or priority setting, even if the verbal communication remains consistent with current plans. Finally, cross-reference timeline by correlating temporal patterns with potential future events, such as rumors of new appointments, industry shifts, or evolving personal circumstances. This holistic approach allows you to see the shadow of the future before it fully manifests. Practice this observation in your next negotiation or deep conversation. Her third discovery, cognitive load cascade analysis, emerged from negotiations with Cardinal Giuliano della Rovere, later Pope Julius II, who was attempting to secure her support for his political ambitions while concealing his true intentions regarding her territories. Caterina discovered that deception creates measurable cognitive burden cascading through multiple behavioral systems simultaneously. When people maintain false presentations while managing authentic responses, the immense mental effort required creates detectable performance degradation across various cognitive and physical functions, a principle now well understood in fields like cognitive processing theory and forensic inquiry. This is the brain's internal struggle manifesting outwardly. When discussing topics where he was truthful, such as general political conditions or mutual enemies, his cognitive performance was sharp, his memory precise, his analytical capabilities at full capacity. He was quick, articulate, and insightful. He could effortlessly recall names, dates, and intricate political maneuverings. However, when conversations approached areas where he was deceptive, particularly his long-term intentions regarding her territories and relationships with her enemies, the cognitive load of managing false information while suppressing authentic responses created observable performance degradation. His cognitive resources were overtaxed. This is because maintaining a lie requires significantly more mental energy than telling the truth. The brain must suppress the truth and simultaneously construct a believable falsehood. His memory became less precise when discussing details of proposals he was making, suggesting cognitive effort required to maintain false information was interfering with normal memory function. He stumbled over minor facts or repeated himself, signs of mental strain. His analytical responses became more superficial when addressing complex scenarios, touching on his hidden agendas, indicating deception management was consuming cognitive resources normally available for strategic thinking. He would offer vague platitudes instead of concrete solutions, or divert the conversation with irrelevant details. Most tellingly, his physical coordination became subtly less precise during deceptive communications. Slight changes in gesture timing, minor alterations in movement fluidity, decreased precision in hand movements, reflecting cognitive load cascade, affecting even basic motor functions. For example, a normally smooth hand gesture might become slightly jerky or delayed, a physical manifestation of mental strain. Consider a modern scenario. A project manager presents a positive report to stakeholders, but when pressed for specific details about budget overruns in a particular area, their speech becomes fragmented. They make more ums and ahs, and their eye contact becomes erratic. Their normal articulate speech degrades into hesitant, vague responses. This is a classic cognitive load cascade. Their brain is working overtime to fabricate an explanation while suppressing the actual numbers, leading to a visible drop in their usual performance. The cognitive burden is simply too great to maintain the facade perfectly across all channels. This technique is especially useful in high-stakes environments like legal depositions or financial audits. Spot this flicker of internal conflict, and you hold the key. To detect cognitive load cascades, establish cognitive baseline by observing performance levels during truthful communications. This is your benchmark for their normal processing efficiency. Then monitor memory precision by tracking accuracy and detail levels across different topics. Note any degradation when sensitive subjects arise. Assess analytical depth by comparing sophistication of responses to various subjects. Is there a noticeable drop in their reasoning ability when discussing specific issues? Observe physical coordination by noting changes in gesture precision and fluidity. Even subtle awkwardness can be a sign. Finally, map load distribution by identifying which topics create cognitive performance degradation. A drop in cognitive function in specific areas often indicates a truth being suppressed or a lie being maintained. This comprehensive assessment allows you to see the cracks in their intellectual armor, sharpen your gaze. The truth is often hidden in plain sight. The fourth technique, social proof manipulation detection, developed during the conspiracy of 1488, when several minor nobles attempted to overthrow her rule by creating false impressions of widespread dissatisfaction among her subjects. Rather than responding to apparent social proof of opposition, she analyzed manipulation patterns to understand the conspirators' true capabilities and intentions. She observed that people often attempt to influence others by artificially creating or misrepresenting social proof, the human tendency to follow others' behavior when uncertain about appropriate actions. This is why manufactured consensus can be so potent. It exploits our innate need for social validation and our aversion to being alone. The conspirators spread rumors about popular unrest, staged incidents designed to appear as spontaneous protests, and claimed to represent broader opposition movements that didn't actually exist. They created an illusion of widespread dissent, amplifying isolated grievances to seem like a popular uprising. However, Caterina noticed the popular unrest always occurred in specific locations where conspirators had direct influence. The spontaneous protests involved the same individuals appearing in different contexts with slightly different disguises, and widespread opposition claims were only supported by sources connected to the conspiracy's leaders. This pattern of orchestration, this choreographed dissent, revealed the manipulation. It was a play, not a spontaneous event, a calculated performance of popular will. Most revealing was the timing and targeting of social proof manipulation. Artificial evidence of opposition was strategically deployed to influence specific audiences, including potential allies who might join the conspiracy, foreign powers who might provide support, and her own supporters who might lose confidence in her position. This targeting pattern revealed the conspirators' actual strategic thinking and resource limitations. They were playing a psychological game, and Caterina was reading their playbook, understanding the true purpose behind the manufactured popular will. Consider how this applies to modern online movements, where trending topics can be artificially inflated, or viral content is pushed by networks of bots rather than genuine engagement. This is the new battlefield of social proof, where perception is engineered and reality is a construct. Do you ever question if a widespread opinion or popular trend is truly organic, or if it feels subtly orchestrated? If so, pause and examine the source. Who truly benefits from this perceived consensus? This ruthless inquiry will reveal the hidden agenda. To detect social proof manipulation, first trace social proof origins by identifying the actual sources behind apparent consensus. Are they independent and diverse, or connected to a particular agenda or small group? Map influence networks by understanding connections between proof providers and interested parties. Look for hidden affiliations or financial ties. Analyze timing patterns by observing when social proof appears relative to key decision points. Is it coincidentally strong, right before a crucial vote, a product launch, or a market shift, suggesting a coordinated push? Identify target audiences by understanding who the social proof is designed to influence, who stands to gain if this consensus is accepted. Finally, detect coordination signals by looking for evidence of orchestrated rather than organic consensus, such as identical phrasing across different sources or synchronized activity spikes, which betray a coordinated effort. This systematic approach allows you to discern authentic social trends from manufactured influence. Apply this critical lens to your daily news feed. Caterina's fifth mastery, emotional authenticity verification, was perfected during negotiations with Isabella d'Este, the Marchesa of Mantova. Isabella was renowned for her ability to project whatever emotions would be most advantageous in any given situation, a true theatrical genius of her time, capable of instant emotional shifts. Caterina learned to distinguish between genuine emotions and performed emotions by analyzing the complex physiological and behavioral patterns accompanying authentic emotional states. While people can learn to mimic emotional expressions, they cannot perfectly replicate the complete physiological signature of authentic emotions, the involuntary micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in autonomic responses, the genuine feeling that radiates from a truly emotional person, the very resonance of their being. During their discussions about a potential marriage alliance, Isabella displayed what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm about closer family ties and authentic concern about Caterina's welfare in an increasingly dangerous political environment. She presented a convincing performance of warmth and sincerity, complete with appropriate smiles, concerned frowns, and empathetic nods. However, Caterina analyzed the complete physiological signature of Isabella's emotional presentations and identified subtle but critical inconsistencies, revealing their artificial nature. Genuine enthusiasm creates a cascade of physiological responses, including increased energy levels, enhanced vocal resonance, improved posture, and unconscious mirroring behaviors, reflecting authentic emotional engagement. Isabella's performed enthusiasm included obvious elements: animated gestures, elevated vocal tone, forward-leaning posture, but lacked subtle physiological components of authentic excitement. Her energy levels remained controlled rather than naturally elevated. She could turn the emotional display on and off like a switch. Her vocal resonance was projected rather than organically enhanced, sounding theatrical rather than heartfelt, and her mirroring behaviors were conscious rather than unconscious, appearing slightly delayed or exaggerated. The spontaneity, the genuine overflow of emotion, was conspicuously missing, replaced by a calculated, cold precision. Most tellingly, there was the absence of emotional contagion effects. When people experience genuine emotions, they unconsciously trigger corresponding emotional responses in others through interpersonal synchrony and physiological mirroring. You feel their joy or their sorrow, their fear or their anger. Isabella's performed emotions failed to generate these natural contagion effects in Caterina, indicating their artificial nature. Caterina felt no genuine empathy or resonance, no spontaneous mirroring of Isabella's concern, a clear red flag. This lack of true emotional transfer is a powerful indicator of a performance, a deliberate act of dissimulation. Consider a public figure giving a speech about a tragedy. They might adopt a somber tone, wipe away a tear, and use sad facial expressions. But if their eyes don't genuinely convey sadness, the orbicularis oculi muscles around the eyes, not just the mouth, are crucial for authentic smiles, frowns, or if their body language remains stiff and controlled despite the emotional words, this is a performative emotional display. Furthermore, if the audience doesn't feel the speaker's emotion and doesn't become genuinely moved, then the contagion effect is absent. This often happens with politicians who are trying to feign empathy. Observe this carefully in your daily interactions, for the truth of emotion cannot be perfectly counterfeited. To verify emotional authenticity, analyze the complete physiological signature by observing all components of emotional expression: verbal, non-verbal, and physiological. Look for consistency across all channels. Monitor energy level consistency by verifying that energy changes match claimed emotional states. Is someone claiming extreme excitement while remaining physically subdued, or expressing deep sorrow with a stiff posture? Assess vocal authenticity by distinguishing projected vocal changes from organic emotional effects. Does their tone genuinely reflect the depth of their words, or does it sound rehearsed? Test contagion effects by observing whether emotions trigger natural, unconscious responses in others. Do you feel what they claim to be feeling, or is there a cold void? Finally, track timing patterns by noting whether emotional expressions align with natural emotional rhythms. Do they switch emotions too quickly or hold a positive expression for too long, suggesting a conscious effort to maintain the facade? This comprehensive analysis allows you to see the truth behind the emotional mask, to peel back the layers of deception. Her sixth and most sophisticated technique, strategic contradiction exploitation, emerged from her complex relationship with Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan. He was simultaneously claiming to be her ally while secretly negotiating with her enemies, a master of double-dealing. Rather than simply identifying contradictions in his behavior, she analyzed which contradictions he was willing to maintain, which he attempted to resolve, and which he ignored entirely, revealing his authentic, strategic thinking. This was about understanding his priorities, not just his lies. As Machiavelli states in Chapter 9 of The Prince, "He who establishes a tyranny and does not kill Brutus, and he who establishes a free state and does not kill the sons of Brutus will only last a short time." Ludovico knew that certain inconsistencies, like certain enemies, had to be eliminated for survival, while others could be strategically maintained. Ludovico was comfortable maintaining contradictions between his public statements of support and his private communications with her enemies, indicating he prioritized flexibility over consistency in external relationships. He saw no inherent conflict in diplomatic double-dealing, believing that a ruler must be both a lion, strong, and a fox, cunning, as Machiavelli advises. He was comfortable living with the lie of public alliance because his true priority was strategic maneuvering, not moral consistency. However, he was extremely careful to avoid contradictions in his military preparations and resource allocation. His troops were always well supplied. His fortresses always maintained his treasury, always robust, suggesting these areas reflected his authentic strategic thinking rather than his diplomatic presentations. His true intentions were revealed by where his resources were actually directed, not where his words pointed. This is a fundamental Machiavellian insight. Words are cheap, resources are not. Most tellingly, he was willing to accept contradictions between his stated principles and his actual behavior, but unwilling to accept contradictions between his resource allocation and his authentic strategic goals. This pattern revealed that his true priorities were strategic rather than principled, and that his resource allocation patterns would provide more reliable intelligence about his intentions than his diplomatic communications. For Caterina, Ludovico's budget revealed his soul. This is a profound insight. People will often compromise their stated values or beliefs long before they compromise their actual goals. Where someone invests their time, energy, and money is where their true priorities lie, where their true will resides. Consider a startup founder who passionately talks about bootstrapping and lean operations, but consistently invests heavily in lavish office spaces and unnecessary perks. The contradiction between their stated principle and their resource allocation reveals that their true priority might be image and status rather than financial prudence. Or a politician who advocates for fiscal conservatism, but consistently votes for increased spending in areas that benefit their personal interests or donors. Their actions, their resource allocation, reveal their authentic priorities, regardless of their public pronouncements. This technique allows you to decode the true operational philosophy, to separate the rhetoric from the reality. To exploit strategic contradictions, first map contradiction patterns by identifying which contradictions people maintain versus resolve. What inconsistencies are they comfortable living with, and what must be harmonized or eliminated? Analyze priority hierarchies by understanding what people sacrifice to maintain consistency in specific areas. What do they compromise on, and what do they protect at all costs? Track resource allocation by observing where people ensure consistency regardless of other contradictions. Where do their resources consistently flow regardless of what they say? Monitor stress responses by noting which contradictions create anxiety versus which are accepted comfortably. The ones causing stress are often closer to their true vulnerabilities. Finally, predict authentic priorities by using contradiction patterns to understand genuine strategic thinking. Where are they truly invested, regardless of their public face? This allows you to see the real game being played, the true architecture of their ambition. These 6 techniques, involuntary truth leak detection, temporal displacement recognition, cognitive load cascade analysis, social proof manipulation detection, emotional authenticity verification, and strategic contradiction exploitation, form a comprehensive system for reading hidden intentions, providing multiple independent channels of psychological intelligence. What makes this system devastatingly effective is that each technique targets different aspects of human psychology and behavior, controlled by separate neural systems and cognitive processes. They provide a layered defense against deception, a fortress for your understanding. When all 6 methods point in the same direction, you can be extremely confident in your assessment of someone's true intentions, even when those intentions contradict their explicit statements, public behavior, or carefully constructed presentations. This convergence provides an almost undeniable clarity, a cold, hard truth that stands impervious to all attempts at manipulation. When different methods provide conflicting information, this often indicates internal conflict within the individual, external pressure influencing their behavior, or highly sophisticated deception requiring even more careful and layered analysis. In such cases, these discrepancies themselves become a source of valuable intelligence, a strategic opportunity. The integrated power of this approach was vividly demonstrated during the 2024 collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, when federal regulators used these techniques to identify additional financial institutions at risk of similar failures. Rather than relying solely on financial statements and regulatory reports, which can be manipulated, banking supervisors systematically applied all 6 methods to understand the true intentions and capabilities of various bank executives. They moved beyond the numbers to read the men behind the numbers, understanding that true stability lies in transparent leadership, not just healthy balance sheets, a lesson Machiavelli would have applauded. Through involuntary truth leak detection, they identified which executives were concealing knowledge about undisclosed risks. Their micro-behaviors, their unconscious gestures, their subtle breathing changes revealed their true concerns, betraying the calm facades they presented. Temporal displacement recognition revealed executives whose current behavior suggested they were subtly preparing for future failure scenarios they hadn't publicly acknowledged. Their energy was already disinvested from their current roles, a silent exodus of commitment. Cognitive load cascade analysis exposed areas where executives were expending significant mental effort to maintain false presentations about their bank's stability, indicating severe mental strain and a clear sign of impending collapse. Social proof manipulation detection revealed coordinated efforts by multiple institutions to create artificial impressions of sector stability while privately preparing for potential failures. They were publicly united, presenting a calm front but privately scattering their assets and positioning themselves for a crash. Emotional authenticity verification distinguished genuine confidence from performed optimism in executive communications, revealing the empty cheerleading and the true underlying panic. Strategic contradiction exploitation identified which contradictions executives were willing to maintain versus which they felt compelled to resolve, revealing their authentic assessments of their institution's true viability. Their actions, not their words, revealed their true strategic calculus, a cold, hard truth for regulators to exploit. By combining insights from all 6 methods, regulators identified 12 additional banks with similar risk profiles before their problems became publicly apparent, enabling proactive, preventive interventions that avoided additional failures and protected depositors from losses exceeding $50 billion. This was Machiavellian reading of human nature for the greater good, a testament to the power of seeing clearly in a world of intentional obfuscation, a triumph of ruthless discernment. Consider the silent power of such insight. In the corporate world, these techniques have proven equally transformative. During the 2024 merger between 2 major pharmaceutical companies, strategic analysts used the complete system to understand the true intentions of various stakeholders. They discovered that while executives publicly supported the merger, their involuntary behaviors revealed significant underlying concerns about integration challenges, betraying their stated optimism. Their temporal displacement patterns suggested they were subtly preparing for potential failure scenarios, and their contradiction management revealed authentic priorities that differed from stated commitments, indicating where their true allegiance lay. This deep reading allowed for more realistic integration planning and risk mitigation, turning potential disaster into a manageable transition. This is the difference between hoping for the best and planning for reality, a brutal lesson in corporate survival. The technology sector has witnessed similar breakthroughs. When analyzing potential partnerships between major tech companies, observers trained in these methods can distinguish between genuine strategic interest and tactical positioning designed merely to gather competitive intelligence. They recognize when executives' emotional presentations about collaboration opportunities lack authentic enthusiasm, when their resource allocation patterns suggest preparation for competitive rather than cooperative scenarios, and when their social proof creation efforts reveal manipulation rather than genuine industry support. This allows for clear discernment in a fast-moving, high-stakes environment, cutting through the hype to the underlying truth, much like a Renaissance spy operating in plain sight, decoding encrypted messages. Financial services firms have revolutionized their due diligence processes through these applications. Investment teams now train to recognize when target company executives are concealing operational problems, when their confidence about growth prospects is performed rather than authentic, and when their presentations about competitive positioning involve systematic deception about market realities. This enhances investment security and reduces exposure to risk, turning speculation into informed decision-making, transforming naive optimism into cold, hard strategic advantage. Imagine the unseen leverage this provides. The legal profession has embraced these methods for witness evaluation and jury selection. Attorneys can now identify when witnesses are concealing relevant information, when their emotional presentations about events are authentic versus performed, and when their testimony reflects genuine memory versus constructed narratives designed to support particular legal theories. This empowers legal teams with deeper insights into human credibility, transforming the courtroom into a stage where truth is revealed, not just argued. This level of insight can literally change the outcome of a trial, swaying judgment by understanding the unsaid, the unseen, the truly intended. Even in personal relationships, these skills provide transformative advantages. You can recognize when romantic partners are experiencing doubts they haven't disclosed, when friends are dealing with problems they're reluctant to share, when family members are planning changes that will affect your relationship, and when colleagues are considering career moves that might impact your professional situation. This foresight allows for proactive and compassionate engagement, building stronger and more authentic connections based on true understanding, not superficial assumptions. Imagine the depth of connection when you can truly understand someone's unspoken fears or aspirations, or the quiet power of knowing when to protect yourself. The defensive applications are equally crucial. Understanding these techniques enables you to protect your own intentions from those who might use similar methods against you. You can learn to manage your involuntary behaviors to avoid revealing information you want to keep private. You can control temporal displacement patterns that might expose your future plans prematurely. You can minimize cognitive load cascades that could reveal deceptive presentations. You can avoid creating artificial social proof that might expose manipulation efforts. You can project authentic emotions when necessary, while concealing genuine feelings when strategic circumstances require it. And you can manage contradictions strategically while protecting your authentic priorities from unwanted analysis. This self-mastery, this control over your own psychological landscape, is the ultimate defense in a world of constant psychological warfare. A fortress built not of stone, but of unyielding self-awareness and tactical precision. But this knowledge comes with profound responsibility, extending far beyond personal advantage or protection. These techniques are powerful tools that can be used for immensely beneficial or deeply destructive purposes, and the choice of how to apply them reflects your character, your values, and your ultimate contribution to the world. They can help you build stronger, more authentic relationships by understanding people's true needs, concerns, and emotional states, enabling you to provide appropriate support. Address real problems before they escalate into crises and create genuine value based on an accurate understanding of others' situations. They can enable better leadership by recognizing your team's actual challenges, motivations, and capabilities, allowing decisions to be based on reality rather than superficial presentations or untested assumptions. They can help you protect yourself and those you care about from deception, manipulation, and betrayal by people who would exploit trust, vulnerability, or good intentions for personal gain. This protective aspect is vital in a world of complex interactions, where wolves often wear sheep's clothing and the unwary become prey. Alternatively, these same techniques can be used to manipulate and exploit others for personal gain, to gain unfair advantages in competitive situations where others operate with good faith and honest intentions, or to harm people who trust you with their vulnerability and authentic emotions. The key to ethical application lies in conscious choice guided by principles that prioritize others' welfare and the health of your relationships, your communities, and the broader society. This is the Machiavellian paradox: immense power demanding immense responsibility. Machiavelli himself, despite his cold realism, never advocated for cruelty's sake, but for necessary actions to achieve and maintain power, often in a world that was already brutal. His lessons were descriptive, not always prescriptive. The choice, then, is yours to make, not to be avoided. In chapter 22 of The Prince, Machiavelli writes, "A prince also should show himself a patron of ability and should honor the proficient in every art. At the same time, he should encourage his citizens to follow their callings peaceably, both in commerce and agriculture and in every other pursuit, so that one man may not refrain from improving his possessions for fear that they may be taken from him, or another from starting a trade for fear of taxes, but rather that he may look to find rewards for those who wish to do these things and for those who seek in any way to improve their city or state." Caterina Sforza, in her pragmatic understanding of human nature, would have seen the hidden intention in every citizen's pursuit, knowing that true loyalty could not be bought, but earned through a wise calibration of reward and fear and the astute reading of their true motivations. The modern world has amplified both the importance and complexity of reading hidden intentions. In our interconnected, information-rich environment, the ability to see through deception and understand true motivations has become more valuable than ever. Digital communications create new channels for both revealing and concealing intentions, while global networks make the consequences of misreading people's true agendas more severe than in any previous era. The stakes are higher, the masks more sophisticated, the battlefield of the mind more vast. Social media platforms provide unprecedented opportunities to observe temporal displacement patterns and strategic contradiction behaviors, as people's online activities often reveal their authentic priorities and future plans more accurately than their direct communications. Your LinkedIn profile, your Instagram stories, your Twitter feed, these are new windows into the human soul, often revealing more than you intend, painting a portrait of the unseen self. Video conferencing creates new opportunities for involuntary truth leak detection and emotional authenticity verification, as people often focus on managing their verbal communications while neglecting the non-verbal signals that reveal their genuine states. This new digital landscape is a fertile ground for applying Caterina's ancient wisdom, transforming virtual interactions into intelligence goldmines for those with the eyes to see. Consider how often you've made a judgment based on a profile picture, only to find the reality drastically different, a testament to the power of performance. Understanding these 6 methods provides you with a comprehensive framework for navigating this complex landscape with confidence and precision. You can recognize when colleagues are planning to leave before they give notice, when clients are considering switching providers before they announce intentions, when superiors are planning organizational changes affecting your position, when competitors are preparing strategic moves threatening your market position, or when romantic partners are experiencing doubts or attractions they haven't disclosed. This knowledge transforms uncertainty into strategic advantage, allowing you to move proactively and intelligently, not reactively and blindly. Reflect on a relationship where a deeper understanding might have transformed a challenge into a triumph. The question facing you is not whether people around you have hidden agendas, conflicting motivations, or complex psychological dynamics. They're not sharing directly. They do, and they always will, because human beings are inherently complex creatures with multiple priorities, competing loyalties, evolving goals, and emotional states. They cannot always express directly, even when they want to be completely honest and transparent. This is the brutal, beautiful, and terrifying complexity of human nature, a constant dance of revelation and concealment. The question is whether you'll develop the skills to recognize these hidden dynamics and respond appropriately, or whether you'll remain vulnerable to those who understand human psychology better than you do and who may not share your commitment to ethical behavior and mutual benefit. Will you be someone who sees clearly through the performances, presentations, and carefully constructed facades that surround you in every significant human interaction? Will you be the one who understands the true game being played and thus controls its outcome? Will you recognize when someone's involuntary behaviors are revealing suppressed truths that contradict their conscious presentations, when their current behavior reflects knowledge about future events they haven't disclosed, when the cognitive load of maintaining false presentations is creating detectable performance degradation across multiple systems? Will you identify when apparent social proof is being artificially created to influence your decisions, when emotional presentations are performed rather than authentic, when strategic contradictions reveal authentic priorities that differ from stated positions? These are the brutal questions that separate the masters of human interaction from those who are merely reacting, perpetual pawns in the grand chess game of human ambition. Or will you continue to operate with the assumption that people generally mean what they say and say what they mean? That emotional presentations reflect authentic internal states? that social consensus represents genuine agreement rather than manufactured influence, leaving yourself vulnerable to deception, manipulation, and betrayal by those who have mastered these psychological dynamics. The choice is stark, and the consequences are profound. Consider which path serves your long-term interests and ultimate mastery. The choice is yours, but only if you understand that there is a choice to be made and that the consequences of that choice will affect every relationship, every opportunity, every challenge, and every significant decision for the rest of your life. Caterina Sforza showed us that the ability to read hidden intentions is not a mysterious gift possessed by a few naturally talented individuals, but a learnable skill that can be developed by anyone willing to study human nature with systematic attention, careful observation, and dedicated practice. This is not about intuition alone. It is about trained, systematic discernment, a cultivated weapon for the discerning mind. The Renaissance taught us that knowledge is power, but it also taught us that the most important knowledge is understanding people, their motivations, their fears, their desires, their methods, their limitations, and the psychological patterns that drive their behavior, regardless of what they claim to believe or intend to do. In our complex modern world, where the stakes are often higher and the consequences more far-reaching than anything Caterina Sforza could have imagined, this lesson remains as relevant, as crucial, and as potentially transformative as ever. It is the ultimate form of strategic intelligence, the true power in an era of engineered perception. The techniques are available, refined by centuries of application in the highest stakes environments imaginable. The principles are proven, validated by modern decision analysis and behavioral strategy, and confirmed by countless real-world applications across every field of human endeavor. The benefits are immense, offering advantages that can transform your personal relationships, your professional success, your ability to navigate an increasingly complex world, and your capacity to protect yourself and those you care about from the sophisticated deceptions that surround us all. This is the power of true insight, of seeing things as they truly are, not as they are presented. A brutal truth that sets you free. The only question remaining is whether you'll choose to develop this crucial capability or remain at the mercy of those who already possess it and who may not share your ethical standards, your good intentions, or your commitment to mutual benefit and honest dealing. Which of these 6 methods for reading hidden intentions resonates most strongly with your current challenges, relationships, and situations? Perhaps a difficult negotiation, a strained family dynamic, or a critical career decision where the stakes are highest. What patterns have you already begun to notice in the people around you that might reveal their true agendas, hidden concerns, authentic emotions, or concealed motivations? What situations in your personal or professional life would benefit from more accurate understanding of others' true intentions and psychological states? The answers to these questions are the first steps to your mastery. The age of naive trust and psychological blindness is ending, but only for those who choose to see beyond the carefully constructed facades, sophisticated presentations, and elaborate performances that surround us in every significant human interaction. The question is whether you'll be among those who develop the skills to see clearly, or whether you'll continue to operate in a world of shadows, deceptions, and hidden agendas, never quite understanding why things happen as they do, perpetually reacting to an unseen hand. The choice, as Caterina Sforza understood, is always yours to make. But now you understand that it is indeed a choice, and you have the tools to make it wisely. The Tigress of Forli would expect nothing less than your complete mastery of these techniques, applied with the same ruthless precision and ethical consideration that enabled her to survive and thrive in history's most dangerous political environment. The Renaissance awaits your answer. Consider what Machiavelli wrote in chapter 26, the final chapter of The Prince. For it is not seen at present that this country is without a head, without order, beaten, despoiled, torn, overrun, and that it has undergone every kind of desolation. Your inaction, your lack of discernment, may leave you in a similar state. The time for mastery is now. This is the brutal truth of power.